Yali Madad everyone, and welcome to this Zoom session of Tuesday, August 4th, 2020 at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Today's lecture is part 1 of the 3-part series on the topic of harnessing knowledge from sacred wisdom. In this lecture, we will explore speeches, sayings, and stories from the wisdom literature to apply their teachings in our daily lives. As well, we will be celebrating Eid-e-Gadir later this week, and Dr. HASSAM will also speak on the significance of Eid-e-Gadir. We will begin with a verse of Ginan, followed by Dr. Hassam's lecture.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Eji Mola Murtaza Ali Dunya Mahe Zahira Thaya Teni Kudarat no Nahi Koi Par Dine Islamo Ethi Peida Thayo Te Karane Mathethi Utarya Duldul Ne Zulfikar Che To Riki Saro Gura Kahe Sacha Sat Gure Ema Kaya. Translation. So moments, God has proclaimed himself in Hazrat Ali, and there is no end to what he can do. He gave us Islam and then came to us riding Duldul with Zulfikar sword in his hand. Eji tena iman ame rakhshun yare varas se Al Jug Kalikar Tene Potana Kari Rakhshun Agar Mahadan Mahe Utar Su Par Che To Chiki Saro Gura Kahe Sacha Sat Gure Ema Kaya. Translation. We will believe with true Iman in Mawla Ali, especially in this present material world, Kaljug. We will also consider him as our own, so that he will be our cause for salvation. This is what the servants will pledge. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen.
Yali Madad everyone. Thank you for your presence this evening. Thank you for ALWAAZ Bahadur Manshi and his amazing rendering of these 2 verses of the Holy Quran from the composition known as Cheto Rikisa. And at the outset, as I like to make some comments and observations on Ginans, fortunately for us today, these 2 verses purposefully have been recited to announce the information that I'm about to share related to Eid Kum, which is to be celebrated probably virtually, if not in the open Jumat Khanas, on the 7th of August. Eid Kum is a fundamentally important celebration in Shia Islam, and very specifically within Shia Islam in our Ismaili Tariqa and Ismaili Satpant Dharam. So what is Eid Kum? To put it very simply, it was the first holy Imamat Day in the history of mankind, not in the history of Muslims or the history of Shias, in the history of mankind. So significant was that day. And you will be able to relate to it in a minute as I give you the linking and the connecting points. But first and foremost, let me here remind all the listeners the amazing declarations and clarification provided to us by our beloved Imams of the past, and particularly Hazrat Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So as we begin this session, just to ensure that you know, this add-on today on Eid Gadir is for the occasion coming up on August the 7th, and immediately thereafter we will then address the subject in question. You may remember when Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam assumed the holy throne of Imamate, he said to the Jamaat, do not consider me small. I am the descendant of Prophet, and my grandfather is Hazrat Amir al-Mu'min, that is Hazrat Ali, and my grandmother is Khatun Jannat, the Lady of Paradise, Hazrat Bibi Fatima. And then, in this particular announcement to the Jamaat, because remember, our beloved Imam was hardly 8 years old. And I would like you to bear this in mind, that you have an 8-year-old Imam seated on the holy throne of Imamate. His beloved father, Imam Aga Ali Shah Mabab, had just passed away. And at the age of 8, he is making these declarations. And among the declaration he says, I am, remember he's 8 years old, he says, I am the light, I am the nur of both Hazrat Ali and Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, though young in age, I am exalted. And then he explains and says that Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam was also young in age, but had the same learning and power as Hazrat Ali himself. So he's giving a historical comparison. And then he says, my nur, my light continues on from there, and verily the light of Ali ever remains in this world. So this farman, I didn't quote the whole farman verbally, I kind of paraphrased it, because it's a very, very long farman, about 10, 12 pages, that was made at the time of the first holy imamat of Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam. And the significant thing I would like you to bear in mind here is to remember that when our beloved Imam says, I am the light, nur of both Hazrat Ali and Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm making this reference because yesterday in my presentation on the history and the mystical theology of peers, I was giving this comparison of Nur-e-Imamat and Nur-e-Nabuwat. And you can see here, Imam Sultan Muhammad alayhi salam speaks about it as the Imam to say, I am the Nur of Hazrat Ali and Holy Prophet Muhammad. And you will remember that this is the concept of Shah and Pir, or Ya Ali and Ya Muhammad, or Ya Allah and His prophets. So if you take it in sequence, you say Ya Allah and His prophets, Ya Ali, Ya Muhammad, Shah and Pir, or we say our Tasbih of Pir Shah. These are the exact equations, exact parallels. So Mawla declares here emphatically at the age of 8 years his position to the Jamaat. And significantly he says, this light continues and verily the light of Ali ever remains in this world. That's really important to understand because remember that in our past history, there have been incidents and events where, in the words of the Quran, people try to extinguish this light as if they could. But the Imam confirms, verily the light of Hazrat Ali ever remains in this world. Now he says something very important here. Of course, they're all important, but the emphasis is, he says that Imam Zainul Abidin was young and he had the same power. Look at this word. He has the same power and learning as Murtaza Ali. This is so nice that when the Imam gives us this understanding. What does he mean by the same power and learning as Mawla Murtaza Ali? Seriously, this is a lecture in itself. Nonetheless, because it is in the context of Eid Qadir, I have to say it to you in that context. You heard the Ginan, the two parts of the Ginan that were recited. And it spoke about the birth of Hazrat Ali. It spoke about the infinite omnipotence, the infinite power of Hazrat Ali. And the Ginan made reference to the fact that not only does Mawla Murtaza Ali has this infinite power, but the whole birth of Islam came into existence. Islam came into being because of Hazrat Ali sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. The whole Islam came into existence because of Mawla Ali. Is that surprising? No. Why? He is the Nur of Allah. If Islam did not come from there, then where did it come from? The Holy Prophet was the recipient of the message, and Mawla Ali alayhi salam was the interpreter esoterically of that message. And so, the Nur was manifested in Mawla Murtaza Ali, as you can see from the farmans that our beloved Imam Sultan Muhammad alayhi salam mentions. Now, why am I focusing on these two aspects? Because I have an occasion tonight to state it. And the first thing to be said is something I've mentioned perhaps in one of my earlier lectures, and that is that the name Ali that refers to Maulana Murtaza Ali, our beloved holy first Imam. Ali is the manifestation of Allah's total and complete power. That's what Mawla Murtaza Ali is. And Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the manifestation of the totality of Allah's mercy. Are you following me this? So Allah's total power and manifestation is Hazrat Ali alayhi salam, and Allah's total complete mercy is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If you are following the inner meaning is within the understanding of the notion of the Imam and the Pir, Shah and Pir, the totality of Allah's power and mercy is there. Another way of saying it, our spiritual father is our beloved Imam, and the spiritual mother is the Holy Pir. It was the same thing during the time of the Holy Prophet, that he was the final prophet to have come onto the face of this planet, but he was also the first Pir, Prophet Muhammad. And the Imam of the time was Maulana Murtaza Ali. So we say, Ya Ali, Ya Muhammad. And we say that in our dua, Ya Ali, Ya Muhammad, Inna kalla kulle shayn qadir. That you have power over all things. You have power over all things. Nothing is missing. Absolutely not one shred of an atom is excluded. So, having said that, let's look a little further into the notion of Gadir. So, into another place, our beloved Imam explained that the Nur is ever present. Only the names changes. Only the names are different. And our beloved Imam says, the throne of Imamat of Mullah Murtaza Ali continues and will remain till the day of judgment. And the Imam had explained that the Imam changes the physical body, very important concept, but the Nur is the same. Now, our beloved Imam, Imam Sultan alayhi salam, says that, speaking about Gadir Kum, let me just first of all tell you something historically. It was on March the 15th, the year 632, when the Holy Prophet was coming back from the last pilgrimage, meaning this was the Holy Prophet's last pilgrimage in Mecca, the Hajj. And with him were 120,000 Muslims who accompanied him. And those 120,000 Muslims who accompanied him, when they left Mecca to go towards Medina, they arrived at a crossroad between Medina and Hadramaut. And that crossroad was known as Gadir Kum, or Kume Gadir, as the Imam refers to. And that was a place between Mecca and Medina where the Prophet actually made a stop on this crossroad. As I said, it was a crossroad between Medina and the Hadramaut. And on this crossroad, the Prophet stopped. And what happened at that time? Well, let me read you an account. Let me read you an account of what is in history. And because it is that event, I have to read it to you straight from, and I found out the shortest account possible, because the history of Kume Gadir, or Gadir Kum, is massive in the Shia literature. And like I said, it could be a lecture on its own, but it need not be today. So one of the person who was accompanying the Prophet by the name of Bara, he says, so I'm quoting from what he reports. And listen, please listen carefully so you can make that point of connection. He says, I was in the company of the Prophet during the farewell pilgrimage. When we reached Ghadir Khum, he ordered that place to be cleaned. Then he took Ali's hand and placed it on his right side. Then he said, meaning the Prophet said, am I the authority whom you obey? They answered, meaning the people answered, we obey your directions. Then the Prophet said, for whomever I am his master, Mawla, and the authority, for whomever I am his master, Mawla, and the authority whom he obeys, Ali will be his master. O God, the Prophet says, O God, be friendly with the friends of Ali and enemy of the enemies of Ali. And then there are other historical things that continues. And then there is another hadith. The first was just that account. There is a hadith known as Hadith Safina. Safina means the ark, that's the boat. And this is the ark and the boat of Noah. And Ibn Abbas, who was one of the persons who related events during the time of the Holy Prophet, he says, the Prophet said, my household is like the ship of Noah. Whoever embarks upon it will be saved, and whoever turns away from it will be drowned. Then there is another hadith, one of the most important hadiths during this particular period, and a very well authenticated hadith, and a hadith agreed by both the Shias and the Sunnis collectively. It's called Hadith al-Saqlain. And what does it say, this hadith? Zayd ibn al-Arqam has recounted that the Prophet said, and the Prophet says, it seems that God has called me unto him, and I must obey his call. Before I continue, I'm just explaining. This is the time when the Prophet was about to leave this physical world. So then this hadith came into being, because 2 months after when Ghadir Khum took place, 2 months thereafter the Prophet passed away. So this hadith al-Saqlain, in which the Prophet says, announces, it says, well, I know I now have been called, so I must obey the command. And then the Holy Prophet continues and says, but I leave 2 great precious things among you, the book of God and my household. Be careful as to how you behave towards them. These 2 will never be separated from each other until they encounter me at Kawthar in paradise, meaning in eternity. Now, just to continue the history, when this declaration was made by the Prophet, which declaration? In Ghadir Khum. Do you remember when I explained to you the declaration that our Holy Peers have mentioned in the part of dua that we recite? Sorry, I have it right here. What was that declaration? The declaration of the Imamat of Hazrat Ali. Because all literature confirm, even Shia literature in large number, they confirm that this verse was revealed to the Holy Prophet to say, O Prophet, bring to humanity the message we entrusted to thee, and if thou dost not deliver it, thou wilt not have fulfilled thy mission. And we say this verse in our holy dua, and the Prophet was reluctant to reveal this because of the opposition that existed there. That is to say, those people who were against Islam, those people who were against the Holy Prophet, and those people who were not part of the faith, they were in opposition, and the Holy Prophet had concerns what would happen. And he receives this divine command to say, reveal, announce, pronounce to humanity the message that was given to you. What was that message? That was the message that was in relation to the declaration of Mawla Ali's imamah. And that is what happened in the Direkum. So just to add to the explanation why this was so significant, remember I had explained in one of my earlier lecture about the metacosmic purpose of creation, that the sending of all the prophets, 124,000 prophets, imagine, the revelations of all the sacred books, 104 books that is mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet. All these were intended that humanity, I underline, humanity, not just the Arabs during the time of the Prophet, not just the Ismailis during the time of Hazrat Ali down the road, but for humanity could know him. The holy office of the Imamate is for humanity to know. Humanity could know him. And then this is confirmed by the Prophet, about whom we have spoken through every prophet and who became manifest at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that was the declaration of the Holy Imamah at the time of the Direkum. This is what the Prophet said in front of 120,000 Muslims. And when he declared, now understand this properly, this is a very important point. When he declared the holy imamate of Maulana Murtaza Ali sallallahu alayhi wasallam, immediately a revelation came. And what was that revelation? That revelation says, which is a verse in the Quran, it says, this day are those who disbelieve in despair of ever harming your religion. So fear them not, fear me. Then listen to this. This is part of the same ayah. The second part is actually the important part. It says, this day, which day? So I'm reading to you the translation, right? In the Quran it says this day. But which day? The day of the Direkum. The day when the holy imamate of Maulana Murtaza Ali was made evident and manifest in front of 120,000 Muslims and to be known to humanity that very day. So in the Quran it says, this day I have perfected your religion for you and completed my favor unto you and have chosen for you as religion al-Islam. That is chapter 5 verse 3 of the Holy Quran. This is so significant because you see, upon the declaration of Mawla Ali's imamate, the revelation confirmed that this day, now that you know who the Imam is, this day I have perfected. religion has become perfect for you, and I have completed my favors. Meaning, Allah says, Mawla Ali's imamat, meaning the cycle of all the imams to come, who are the bearers of the Noor. This is a favor unto mankind and creation. That Allah says in the Quran, I have completed my favor unto you. And only then the Quran says that and have chosen for you as religion al-Islam. Do you see the Ginan that was recited? That says the whole of Islam came into existence because of Mawla Ali. Here is, if you like, the verse of that Ginan resonates with the verse of this particular part of the verse of the Quran. Now, a lot can be said more about that, but let me now come to what our Imams taught us. Imam Sultan Muhammad alayhi salam says to us, he says, this is Salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Our beloved 48th Imam says to us, at Gadir Kum, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, I'm leaving behind me two things which will continue till the day of judgment and will remain together till House Kausar, mean till eternity. The Prophet continued, which are those two things? They are my progeny and Quran. Both of these things will continue till the day of judgment and will remain together till House Kausar, eternity. So, unquote. So first I read to you the hadith that is actually in the Shia literature. And I gave you the name of the hadith transmitter. Our beloved Imam confirms the same part of history in his holy rendering, in his holy expression, where he confirms these two things, that the hadith is a claim that the Holy Prophet said it is leaving behind, like the Holy Prophet said, the Book of God, the Quran, and my household. And when the Holy Prophet was asked, who is your household? I'm now paraphrasing in the interest of time. And the Holy Prophet said, my household are Hazrat Ali, Imam Hussein, Hazrat Hassan, Holy Bibi Fatima, and myself, meaning the Halal Bayt. So again, you will find these confirmations in the Shia literature. And there are many other things the Holy Prophet said soon thereafter, especially, I'm looking for that quotation, but let me just paraphrase it to you. He says, when he said that I'm leaving these two things, my household and the Book of God, and they're both tied together, and they will never be separated until the day of eternity, the day of Qiyamah, when Qiyamah will come. Now think about this hadith. This hadith is a claim, very important hadith. They will never be separated. Are you following the logic of the importance of this Eid Gadir Kum? Why Eid? Why is it celebration of Gadir Kum? Because more than any other Eid to be celebrated, this Eid is so phenomenal. And in terms of meaning, in terms of what it represents to us in our daily life. And when the Holy Imam, as the Prophet said, and the book, meaning the Quran, are tied together, you can imagine what that means. Because in the spiritual sense, the Holy Imam is the spoken Quran. Quran and Natiq. And the book, the Quran itself, is Quran Samit, meaning the silent Quran. So the spoken Quran and the silent Quran are tied together, meaning the Holy Prophet says in a hadith that the truth is with Ali, and the truth follows Ali. The truth is with Ali, and it is the truth that follows Ali. Understand this, meaning when the Imam gives his ta'wil and ta'lim and guidance, this hakikat emanates from the very source of the truth. And based on the meaning of our tariqah, I am speaking about our tariqah, not others. Others have their story, their understanding, their interpretation, and we respect them. It is theirs. What is ours? Ours is Mullah Bapa himself and his guidance. This is what it is. That the imamate is tied with the Quran. And it is, though, a revelation for the whole of humanity. The Quran is the final revelation that came from God for the whole of mankind. So I want you to understand that being so, the notion in Ghadir Qum, when the Prophet had to reveal the imamate to mankind, is tied to the book that is meant for mankind. Now, I will leave it to your intellect to continue thinking and to continue analyzing and to continue elaborating this amazing, amazing part of our history and understanding the spiritual meaning to that. So I leave that to you. And this indeed is in very, very brief and very short the significance of this day of Ghadir Qum. Now, let us get into the subject for tonight, which is intended to be the enhancing this wisdom from various sources. And I've chosen this subject by consultation and recommendation to perhaps create a little lighter note for today, because in the last few weeks, subjects apparently were very heavy and people are still digesting. And nonetheless, this was an amazing idea that was given. Recently, you know that we celebrated Eid al-Zoha or Eid al-Azha, or sometimes known as Bakri Eid. Are you familiar with this farman Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam said? And our beloved Imam says, and I'm just paraphrasing, our beloved Imam says that every year you are beneficiary of two Eid. So we have Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Azha. But then the Imam says that you have Eid every day for those who are part of our understanding in our tariqah. I'm paraphrasing. And the Imam made this thing evident that those who are in the context of our practice, of our understanding, and those who have, if I may add, the remembrance, and who are part of spiritually and intellectually understanding imamate, for them, it is not 2 Eid a year, it is every single day there is Eid. And how very fortuitous that we are speaking about Eid Ghadir Qum, that actually in some way makes that link and confirms to us, because the manifestation of the Holy Imamate is there every day and has been so since that public declaration at Gadir Kum. Let us now start with this whole notion of enhancement from spiritual wisdom. So I have selected a number of quotes and stories, if you like, something from the hadith of the Prophet. Now there are so many, as you probably can imagine, and today, because of the nature of it, if we don't complete, which is perfectly normal, I thought if you enjoy this particular session in this manner, every now and then we can bring it out again and make it like a part 2, a part 3, and a part 4. This is never ending because it's really amazing to see when you look at the teachings, the talim of the holy Imam, of the prophets, of the mystics, of the saints, of people like Rumi, Ibn Arabi, and all the others. And I'm particularly referring to those teachings that comes from the mystical aspect of our tariqah, but sometimes also of others, which we find the linkage and we find the connection. So one of the things that Hazrat Ali has said, which our beloved Imam has quoted, I'm not giving all the references because it's just too cumbersome, but I'm sure you can find them. If not, let me know. So this particular quotation is so amazing. Maulana Bapa says, quoting Hazrat Ali alayhi salam, he says, no honor is like knowledge. No belief is like modesty and patience. No attainment is like humility. No power is like forbearance. And no support is more reliable than consultation. Hazrat Ali. Now I know you probably have heard this in many different ways, and you probably have sought to find meaning. And every time I have read this quotation from our beloved Imam that he made in one of his speeches, then it brings an enormous amount of light and understanding in how we should be living and understanding our behavior and the things that we do. So for example, let's analyze this quote. This quote says, no honor is like knowledge. Now what do we mean by knowledge here? Now you know what knowledge is in that ordinary sense of the term. But what did Mullah Ali said about knowledge? So I am using the quote of Hazrat Ali given by the Imam, and then I'm using Hazrat Ali again in a separate place who actually describes what Hazrat Ali himself is saying about knowledge. So what happened, to make it very short, one day 10 people came to Hazrat Ali. They were very learned people. They came to Hazrat Ali and they say to Hazrat Ali that we seek your permission for putting a question to you. And Hazrat Ali said, all right, go ahead, I give you permission. And they said to Hazrat Ali, these 10 people, they said, of between knowledge and wealth, which is better and why? And please give us a separate answer for each. So remember, there were 10 people. So they said, tell us between wealth and knowledge, which is better and why? Now, because we are 10 people, so give us 10 different reasons. So Maula Ali replied, and I'm reading to you. Maula Ali replied, 1. Knowledge is the legacy of the prophets. Wealth is the inheritance of the pharaohs. Therefore, knowledge is better than wealth. Number 2. You are to guard your wealth, but knowledge guards you. Therefore, knowledge is better. Number 3. A man's wealth has many enemies, while a man's knowledge has many friends. Hence, knowledge is better. Number 4. Knowledge is better because it increases with distribution, while wealth decreases by that act. Number 5. Knowledge is better because a learned man is apt to be generous, while a wealthy person is apt to be miserly. Number 6, knowledge is better because it cannot be stolen, while wealth can be stolen. Number 7, knowledge is better because time cannot harm knowledge, but wealth rusts in the course of time and wears away. Number 8, knowledge is better because it is boundless, while wealth is limited and you can keep account of it. Number 9, knowledge is better because it illuminates the mind, while wealth is apt to blacken it. Number 10, knowledge is better because knowledge induced the humanity in our prophet to say to God, quote, "We worship thee as we are your servants," unquote, while wealth engendered Pharaoh and Nimrod the vanity which made them claim Godhead, unquote. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this amazing? And while we are speaking about knowledge, and I can tell you, there is an infinite amount of this form of knowledge that our beloved first Imam has shared all across the board during his time and during the time of the Holy Prophet and during the time that he was Imam and Caliph. And I have decided at some point in the near future to basically have that history quotes exclusively of Maula Ali available so that we could explore that most, because that is so fundamental to us. So that is the part of knowledge. And while we are on this part of knowledge, let me just add a couple of other things that I remember. One day, a person came to Hazrat Ali alayhi salam and said that how do we know which creature is born out of the womb, in other words, mammalian, and which creature is born out of the egg, meaning oviparous? And Hazrat Ali immediately replied, Hazrat Ali said, look at the ears. If it is born out of the egg, the ears will be inside the skull. And if it is born out of the womb, then the ears will be outside the skull. You know, people were not aware of this kind of knowledge in the past. And I know this sounds very simple example today, but in those days it was amazing. And there are even more amazing, mystical, spiritual examples that Hazrat Ali gave. And one day, inshallah, we shall come across them, and hopefully, if Mawla wills, I'll be able to present it. So that was the first part of this saying. It says, no honor is like knowledge. Now you know why knowledge is better. And then Mawla Bapa says in this quote, no belief is like modesty and patience. Wow. No belief is like modesty and patience. Why do you think Hazrat Ali related the notion of belief and patience together? Patience, unfortunately, is one of those qualities that is in short supply. And in a world in which we live, where people are always looking for that pill that gives you instant and immediate result, we are into a society that requires instantaneous result. You know, press the button and it should happen right away. And yet, our beloved Imam, in a very important ceremony where he was invited to speak and where he was honored with a prize, mentioned this particular quotation. Now, a lot can be said about patience, but rather than quoting, let me say to you in my own words and then mention to you a key point. That when you think about modesty and patience, what is it? What is patience? Patience is the ability that a person has to allow the divine to do his job. I repeat, patience is the ability a human being has. When I say ability, I mean his knowledge, his understanding, his wherewithal, where he knows where this is coming from. And basically, the person understands why I should have patience because Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam says that patience is like the head of the body. Patience is like the head of the body, as faith is to the practice of religion. Understand this. Patience is like the head of the body, as faith is to religion. Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam said that. So he says, if you cut the head, the body dies. If you take faith away from religion, religion dies. So, in this particular case, our beloved Imam says, no belief, you see the word belief, is like modesty and patience. You know what it says in the Quran? God is with those who are patient. Really, try to understand this, okay? Understand this in its fullest stature. God is with those who are patient. Now, I have all these hundreds of places I can read about this, but because of the time, I don't want to overextend. There's so much to say to you this evening. And I know I won't have time for all of it. We probably will have a part 2 of this. So, if God is with the patient, right? Because this is what the Quran says. So what more do you need? If you knew and know now that God is with those who are patient, so you say, here I am, I'm facing all these amazing calamities, problems, difficulties, and we are being told, be patient, be modest. Because no belief, Hazrat Ali says, is like modesty and patience. No belief. So if I say, God is with me, Mawla is with me during my difficulties, we know that from our faith, right? And we know that from the teachings of our beloved Imam, that no belief is like modesty and patience. Patience is the ability to allow Mawla, the divine, to fulfill his task in that particular context. And you know, the outcome of it is in our dua. When we are seeking help, when we say, Mawla, we rely upon you, guide us, protect us, we have power into everything, and so on. I hope you understand this second part of the quotation. The third part, no attainment is like humility. This is an amazing one. Now, a lot can be said about the notion of humility, but let me say it to you in one sentence. Humility. What is humility? Humility is a state of being, and when you are into that state of being, what does it do? It opens the door of grace. It opens the door of mercy. Grace and mercy. So ask yourself, do I want the grace and mercy from my Imam, his love and compassion? Then be humble. Now remember, when we speak about His grace and His mercy, it's not just for material things. is more so for our spiritual things. Both. Humility is such an important quality of spiritual seekers. And in our tariqah, it is absolutely fundamental when it comes to the search for spiritual enlightenment. Humility. In fact, humility actually means, in this context, because look what the Imam says here. Try to understand this in the most profound manner. No attainment is like humility. No attainment. I mean, if you were to win a huge lottery tomorrow, wouldn't that be an attainment? If you were to win another kind of prize or recognition in whatever endeavor that you are, you would say, I have attained this. I have been blessed with this. But our beloved Imam says, Mawla Ali said, no attainment is like humility. I mean, if you have that humility, you have attained everything. It's higher than any other attainment you can even believe, know, or even experience or receive. So what does that mean? Because when you are able, through humility, be the recipient of grace, because humility opens the door of the Imam's grace and mercy upon the believer. This is how we see it. This is the reason. At all times in our existence, every moment we live, how do you think we attain that humility? How do you think that humility is attained? By constantly remembering the name of the Imam and knowing as a reality that my Imam is present by my side, right in front of me, right here, my Mawla is present with me. This is not just a statement or lip service. It has to be absolutely real. And when you make that a reality, you will conduct yourself in a manner that fulfills the identity